Today's video is brought to you by Manscaped.com, the global men's lifestyle brand that is shaking up the grooming world. All right, it's rivalry week. It's time to make some predictions. This is my favorite week of the college football season every single year. I always go back and forth in my head between week one and rivalry week. Week one is exciting, obviously, because you haven't seen football in forever. And well, I know we have a week 0 now, but you only get a couple of games. That first full weekend of college football falls on a holiday. You get 4 straight days of games, 5 really, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then they have a Sunday night game and a Monday night game. That's a great weekend of football too. But for my money, give me rivalry week. There are great games, 2 days, Friday and Saturday. Early afternoon primetime games. You've always got, of course, the rivalry games, but because it falls so late in the year, conference championship implications at stake in a lot of these games. 12-team playoff now, so you got a lot of playoff stuff going on with these rivalry games. So this is my favorite. This is my favorite week of the college football season every single year. I'm going to run through a long list of games in this video, and I'm going to give you kind of brief thoughts on a lot of my games. Before we get to that, make sure you check out today's sponsor, Manscaped. All right, now Halloween is behind us. We got Thanksgiving, and then Christmas is right around the corner. And you know what that means. It's time to tighten up those jingle bells. We're right in the middle of football season, and whether you're talking about the NFL, college football, or fantasy, there's one thing we can all agree on. It is an absolute must that you take care of your game balls. Do not be that 5-star dummy that leaves your personal grooming habits on the end of the bench. 5-star dummy. Check out the Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, your ultimate grooming playbook. This all-star lineup has everything you need to stay sharp on and off the field. Up first, we've got the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, and this is your star player. This trimmer handles all your below the waist needs with precision and power, whether it's for game day or date night. With next-gen dual skin-safe blades, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is designed for top-tier performance. You start with the upgraded trimmer blade for a clean, easy trim, then switch on over to the foil blade for a smooth, bare finish. It's really like having 2 trimmers in one. The all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also has a bigger LED light to help illuminate those tricky spots and a dual temperature feature. No more missed assignments in your grooming routine. But wait, there's more. The Weed Whacker 2.0, that's right, say goodbye to the bothersome nose hairs with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra Kit, which comes complete with the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer. It's also waterproof, cordless, and rechargeable, and guess what? Built with the same skin-safe technology. This thing's designed to tackle those nose and ear hairs with ease. You're also going to get both the Crop Soother and the Crop Preserver. Post-shave, you can show your MVPs some love with the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Keep fresh and comfortable through all 4 quarters and into overtime. And just for fun, the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra also includes not 1, but 2 free gifts. You get the Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag. That's a winning combo. Go ahead and join the over 10 million men who have trusted Manscaped to get them game day ready. Head on over to manscaped.com, enter the promo code TheUncleLou, and they're going to give you free shipping and 20% off. That's promo code TheUncleLou, only at manscaped.com. All right, a little disappointing. They have moved the Egg Bowl off of Thanksgiving. That's been part of my Thanksgiving tradition for a while now. I'd go do my Thanksgiving thing with my family all day long. We usually go to a couple of different places during the day and afternoon on Thanksgiving. And then I'd come home in a turkey coma, and I would turn on the Egg Bowl. I'd watch Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and I've even live streamed it the last few years. They have moved that from Thursday to Friday. We do have a Thursday game. It's Memphis at Tulane. And even though this is a group of 5 matchup, Tulane still has a chance to get into the playoffs. They actually have 2 chances to get into the playoffs. They could, of course, be the highest group of 5 team, which would guarantee them a spot in. There's also a theory floating around, an idea floating around that it's possible Tulane could finish higher than the Big 12 conference champion. In that scenario, we would end up with 2 group of 5 teams in the playoffs. You'd have the SEC champ, the ACC champ, the Big 10 champ, and then you'd have Boise State and Tulane. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the winner of the Big 12 is going to end up jumping Tulane. So I think Tulane's only shot at getting into the playoffs is to win their conference and hope that Boise State loses. But nevertheless, this will be an interesting game. Memphis on the road at Tulane, 7:30 on Thanksgiving night. So if you're looking for some college football, there will be the NFL on as usual. But if you're looking for an alternative to that, Memphis at Tulane, 7:30 on ESPN. Tulane's a 13.5-point favorite. I think Tulane will get the job done. Home game for them. I like the green wave there. Then we move on to Friday, and we've got a whole day's worth of games here starting at noon and running all the way through prime time. Boise State hosts Oregon State. Not a huge matchup in terms of the two teams, but a must-win game for Boise State, and they're a big favorite, a 19-point favorite. Win this one, they go on to the conference championship next week, and if they win that game, they're most likely headed to the playoffs. Weird season for Oregon State this year, of course. Pac-12 went away. They kind of got left behind them in Washington State, so like a patchwork schedule for them. Feel bad for Oregon State. Their season probably going to lose with a loss here on the road at number 11, Boise State. Oklahoma State at Colorado. Not a rivalry game, but it does have some Big 12 playoff implications. Colorado is technically still alive to make the Big 12 title game. Now, they need a lot of things to happen. But they have to win in order for any of those things to matter. So they kick off noon on Friday. They're a 16.5-point home favorite over Oklahoma State. I do think they win the game. What do y'all think about Travis Hunter not even being a finalist for the Thorpe Award? I don't understand that. I think he's the best player in college football. I think if he was just a defensive back, he'd be a first-round pick. I think if he was just a wide receiver, he'd be a first-round pick. Of course, we know he's both. I don't know. Interesting there. I still think he'll win the Heisman, but odd to me that he got left off the finalist list for the Thorpe Award. Going on through the day on Friday, some of these games have more meaning than others. Minnesota at Wisconsin. Nothing too interesting there. The Egg Bowl, 3:30 on Friday. So used to be played on Thanksgiving night. Now it's played on Friday at 3:30. Mississippi State on the road at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, one of these teams, I guess we can refer to them as a bubble team. You're really talking about Clemson, South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Those are your bubble teams. Ole Miss is the lowest ranked of those at 14. I think Alabama's at 13. Clemson's at 12. Anyway, very disappointing loss last week for Ole Miss on the road at Florida. No excuse for them going in there and losing that game. I know Florida with Lagway has been playing a little bit better here second half of the season, but Ole Miss had everything on the line in that game. They most likely weren't going to go to the SEC championship. So all they had to do was beat Florida, and then this week Mississippi State, and they'd have been heading to the playoffs. Couldn't get it done. Very disappointing loss for Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, and company last week on the road at Florida. Now they got to turn around and play in-state rival Mississippi State. Mississippi State's probably the worst team in the SEC. I do think Ole Miss wins. They're favored by 26, though. That seems like a little too much for a possibly demoralized Ole Miss team. I'll take Mississippi State in the points, although I do think Ole Miss wins the game. Going on through some more Friday games here. Georgia Tech on the road at Georgia. This is another game that's been moved this year. This game traditionally played on Saturday. Been moved back to Friday as part of the SEC's deal with ABC. So Georgia, a big home favorite here, 19.5 points. Weird situation that Georgia finds themselves in here. On one hand, this game doesn't matter at all because Georgia has made it to the SEC championship game the following week. And if Georgia wins the SEC championship game, they're going to get a first-round bye. Whether they win or lose this game against Georgia Tech by 100 will have no impact on that. If they win that SEC championship game, they'll be a 1-4 seed and have a first-round bye. But if they lose this game and then lose the SEC championship game, they would most likely be out of the playoffs. So I do think this game is important. It obviously has meaning from a rivalry perspective. This is an in-state rivalry. It matters with recruiting. It matters for pride. It matters for alumni for both universities. And Georgia Tech has been a better program over the last couple of years, obviously, than they were under Jeff Collins. Brent Key has done a pretty good job there with them. They just don't have the athletes or the players that Georgia does. It was an interesting game last season. The score was a little bit closer than the game actually was. And I think this one might be close too. Georgia hasn't covered a lot of spreads this year. They're 3-8 against the spread. So they win a lot of games, but they don't usually cover the number. And a strange thing about that, the 3 times that Georgia has covered the spread has been in their 3 biggest wins of the year. They covered the spread against Clemson back in week 1. They covered the spread on the road against Texas a month and a half ago. And they covered the spread against Tennessee a couple of weeks ago. They tend to not cover the spread against some of the lower competition teams that they play. So if I was going to bet this game, which I don't bet on Georgia games, I would take Georgia Tech in the 19.5 points, but I do think Georgia wins this game by a couple of scores. Nebraska at Iowa, maybe a baseball score probably. 7-3 final score there, maybe. And Utah at Central Florida. That's your Friday slate. Then you move into Saturday, and it's just find a comfortable spot in a chair and don't move all day. Have somebody bring you some food and water a couple of times, and you'll be good. Tennessee at Vandy, huge game. It sounds weird to say that, Tennessee at Vandy, but thanks to the 12-team playoff, this is a must-win game for Tennessee. They're sitting there around the 8 to 9 seed, somewhere in that range there right now. They go on the road, get this win at Vandy. They are a lock to make the 12-team playoff. If they lose this game to Vandy, they're not going to make it. It's literally that simple. It's a must-win game for the Vols. They're a 10.5-point favorite on the road at Vandy. I think they get the job done and win the game. South Carolina at Clemson, another huge game, in-state rivalry, bitter, emotional game every single year. The two teams don't like each other. The fan bases don't like each other. But this year, there is a lot on the line here. South Carolina may have a path to the playoff. They would need a lot of teams to lose. Clemson's got a couple of different possible paths to the playoffs. Path number one, win this game and hope that maybe Notre Dame loses to Southern Cal, or Tennessee loses to Vandy, or Indiana loses to Purdue, whatever. You need upsets ahead of you if you're Clemson for path number one. Path number two, kind of like with Georgia, doesn't have anything at all to do with this game. Clemson is in second place by themselves. Well, they're tied with Miami for an ACC championship game spot. SMU is already in. Miami plays on the road at Syracuse. If Miami were to lose to Syracuse, Clemson would back into the ACC championship game. So for that path, it doesn't matter whether Clemson wins or loses this game. This isn't an ACC game. Of course, they still want to win the game. They're a 2.5-point favorite. So for Clemson to get in the playoffs, they either need to win this game and then have a few teams ahead of them lose, or they need for Miami to lose on the road at Syracuse, and then they would need to beat SMU in the ACC championship next week, of course, guaranteeing them a spot in the playoff. I like Clemson at home to win a close one here. I think this is going to be a really good game. South Carolina's been red hot. The defense has been good all year. Their quarterback is playing well. This is going to be a good game. If the turnover problems that sort of have plagued Clemson over the last year or so pop up in this game, they could find themselves in trouble. South Carolina beat Clemson 2 years ago in Clemson, so we'll see. But I do like Clemson to get the job done. Very close game. Louisville at Kentucky, another in-state rivalry here, ACC versus SEC. Kentucky won this game last year. Louisville was pretty good, made the ACC championship game, and despite the fact that they lost this game to Kentucky. And I like Louisville to win this year. They're a 4-point favorite. Kentucky has been getting worse as the season has gone along. I actually think Louisville wins this game fairly easily. Continuing on through the list here, we'll stop on any of the big ones that we see here. Maryland at Penn State. Hard to see Penn State losing that one. Maryland's not a good team. It's a home game for Penn State. They're a 24.5-point favorite. Like them to win there. Notre Dame on the road at Southern Cal. Notre Dame's a 7.5-point road favorite at the Trojans. Southern Cal's made a quarterback change over the last few weeks. Appears to have given them sort of a new life offensively. I worry about Southern Cal's ability to stop the run in this game. Notre Dame has the ability, if they decide to kind of just line up and sort of run the ball, and if you can't stop me, we're going to keep doing it type thing. And I wonder if Southern Cal has the ability to do that. They've been pushed around on the line of scrimmage multiple times this year. Their defensive line is really, really thin. Jeremiah Love, that running back for Notre Dame, is one of the best in the country. Hard for me to see Notre Dame losing this game on the road to Southern Cal. I just think they're a way better team, on top of the fact that it's a must-win game for Notre Dame. They win this, they're in the playoffs. They lose it, they're likely out. They would have two really bad losses, Southern Cal and, of course, Northern Illinois, earlier this season. They do have a good win earlier on the road at Texas A&M. Other than that, they've beaten two service academies, and that's about it. But I think Notre Dame rolls in this one. Miami at Syracuse, must-win game for Miami. I think Miami will get the job done. Syracuse is an 11-point underdog. They're 8-3, Syracuse is. They're not a slouch. A lot of people didn't watch Syracuse much this year, and then they watched that Thursday night game between Syracuse and Pitt. Syracuse came out through like 4 interceptions in the first half. The game was over before it started, and people kind of came to a conclusion about Syracuse after that game. That's not the Syracuse we've seen most often this year. I actually think Syracuse has the ability to keep this thing close. I'll take Syracuse in the points, but I do think Miami wins the game. Auburn at Alabama. Alabama, like Ole Miss, completely blew it last week, unable to even score a single touchdown on the road at Oklahoma, losing 24-3. Oklahoma had almost 300 yards rushing on Bama. One of the worst performances by Alabama we have seen in probably 15 years, knocked themselves out of the playoff picture. Now, they are one of these bubble teams, and so winning this game is a must for any possibility for Alabama to get into the playoffs. But then, like South Carolina or Clemson or whoever else on down the list, they're going to need losses in front of them, even if they win this game, in order to try to get in. They're an 11.5-point home favorite. Actually, like Alabama to win and cover in that one. Auburn had a good win last week against Texas A&M. But I think their season ends with a loss. Give me the Tide in the Iron Bowl. Arizona State at Arizona. Arizona State wins this game. They're in the Big 12 title game. It's basically that simple. They're an 8.5-point favorite. I like Arizona State to win and cover. Arizona been disappointing. Arizona was picked in the top 4 or 5 of the Big 12 heading into the season. Arizona State was picked dead last. They have swapped spots. Arizona turns out is one of the worst teams in the Big 12, and Arizona State's got a chance to make the playoffs if they can win the Big 12 championship next year. Scatterboo at running back there, having a great year for Arizona State. Give me the Sun Devils. Arkansas at Missouri. Missouri favored by 3. This is a tough one, too. I'm going to take Missouri because they're at home. Disappointing season this year to me for Missouri. I don't know why they're ranked. They're ranked 21. I don't know why. They're not one of the best 25 teams in the country, but neither is Arkansas. Give me Missouri at home to win by a touchdown. NC State at North Carolina. Mac Brown's last game. They've fired him, technically, I guess, but they're going to let him coach this game. So sort of the last hurrah for Mac Brown here. I think the team plays well for him in his last game. Give me the Tar Heels. Lay the 3 against a disappointing NC State team this season. Going on into the primetime games, Purdue at Indiana. Indiana should roll. Purdue's a 1-win team. They might be the worst team in the Power 4, not named Florida State. They're a 29-point favorite. Indiana will win big. Florida at Florida State. Florida should win this one. It's on the road. They seem to have turned a little bit of a corner over the last couple of weeks, beating LSU and Ole Miss back-to-back. I think they keep it going. I think Florida gets a win on the road at Florida State. Florida State won last week, but it was against Charleston Southern. I still think they're a really, really bad team. They've already moved on to next year in Tallahassee. Oklahoma at LSU, one of these new SEC matchups we're seeing this year. LSU's a 6-point home favorite. I like LSU to win and cover. I know LSU's been disappointing. They lost to Florida a couple of weeks ago. Oklahoma, of course, had a huge win against Bama. I think a little bit of a hangover effect there. I think Oklahoma goes on the road to LSU and loses by 10. Give me LSU, lay to 6 points. Washington at Oregon. Oregon, number 1 team in the country, undefeated. I don't think that changes on Saturday. I like Oregon to win big. Texas at Texas A&M, by far the game of the day, game of the week, maybe the game of the year. Been waiting 15 years to see this game, rivalry game. Got taken away from us a few years ago when Texas A&M left the Big 12 for the SEC. Texas got mad. They didn't play anymore. Now Texas in the SEC with Texas A&M, and they've been forced to play by the conference. Everything on the line. Winner of this game makes the SEC title game. Loser could be out of the playoffs, even if it's Texas. It would only be Texas' second loss, but they don't really have a signature win. Texas doesn't. The only ranked team they've played this year is Georgia, and they lost by double digits at home. Texas did. So if they're 10-2 and they lost the only 2 games they played to ranked teams, Georgia and Texas A&M, not only would they miss the SEC championship game, I think they'd be in danger of missing the playoffs at 10-2. They could easily fall behind Clemson, for example. In the sort of line to get into the playoffs. Big game here for both Texas and Texas A&M. Tough to win on the road. Texas is a 5.5-point road favorite. I'm going to take Texas to win the game. I'm not betting $1 on this thing. I don't know which way this could end up going. 5.5 might be too many points, but I do think Texas finds a way to get the win on the road at Texas A&M. Kansas State at Iowa State. Winner could be in the Big 12 title game. Iowa State's a 2.5-point home favorite. I'm going to go with Kansas State. Something tells me I'm wrong there, but if you've been following me this year, you know I've kind of been on the Kansas State train. Give me Kansas State. Disappointing year, 3 losses for them, but I think they close it out with a win on the road at Iowa State. Nevada at UNLV. UNLV, of course, my hometown team. We all know that. Give me UNLV. They're a 17.5-point favorite. Believe it or not, they still have a chance to make the playoffs as well. They play Boise State, I think, in the conference championship game coming up next week. Virginia Tech. I actually like Virginia here. Virginia Tech's favored by 7. I think Virginia might win the game. That's about it. There you go. A quick rundown of a lot of different games there. I couldn't be more excited for this weekend's games. I will be live Friday night for the Georgia Tech game right here on YouTube, and I'll be live basically all day Saturday for these rivalry games as well. Let me know down below what you think about these games. What are your picks on the bigger games of the week? Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.